Today, Jennifer Foster joins me, who's been in the Women's Super League now for quite some time. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Really nice to finally speak to you, and really good to be here. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, do you want to start us off then with your early days playing football?
Yeah. So I think probably my earliest memory was like a lot of people, I guess, that kind of started playing football as a girl my age, started in a boys' team. And I think it was difficult because obviously being the only girl, and I think a lot of people can probably relate. In terms of you were probably the last one to be paired up with someone, and everyone was like, I don't want to, play with the girl, etc. And then it was almost like you had to earn your stripes. And then, after a few training sessions, kind of realised, I could play. And then, I really enjoyed it. I think I had two years playing for my local boys team before I got to the age where you had to go and play for a girls team. And then a friend of my dad said, "Oh, my daughter plays for Birmingham City. They've got trials, how about Jen comes along?" So anyway, went to trials, got into, it was called like Centre of Excellence then, as opposed to like Academy. And then, spent most of my career at Birmingham, came through from under 10s all the way up to the women's first team, and made my senior debut against Chelsea, which was nice.
And what was that like?
Oh, I mean, it was surreal, because my birthday is July. So when the season started, I'd actually not long turned 16. And I remember it was Leanne Sanderson and Enia Luco, who were the Chelsea centre forwards at the time. So it was kind of a bit of a surreal moment to be making my debut, against players of that talent. But it was brilliant, kicked on that season. And then obviously then I had my spells at Nottingham Forest, which I moved to because I was at Nottingham Trent University, and it kind of worked. And then I had a spell at Leicester and Coventry as well.
So we're speaking about, I suppose, a barrier to participation where there wasn't too many girls' teams in your local area. And obviously there's still room to improve now. But how far has the women's game come from when you were younger in that youth term to where we are now?
Oh, I mean, it's light years away. I remember when I was playing, you're wearing kind of hand-me-down kit from the men's or the boys team to now, and obviously I'm a massive part of the game still, but there's always times where I kind of just take a step back and think, God, I'd love to be a player now, professional, salaries are good, etc. And just seeing, the growth of the game and the love of it, don't get me wrong, we're still trying to break down barriers, but it's light years away from what it was when I was younger.
So you went to America, I believe, only for a month or two. What was that like? Why did you decide to leave this country?
It was kind of to, like, I say, almost kickstart a bit of coaching. I've not really done much before then, and one of my friends was going over to coach for like a soccer school over there, and said, do you want to come over? So it was more, I was one of those people that I was always trying to embrace opportunities. I spent a month over there coaching, and we kind of traveled around a few different places and coached. And then it was just a summer of exploring what it's like to be a coach, and obviously you're coaching varied age groups over there, but it was just a great opportunity that I embraced.
And obviously you said you enjoyed it, right? How was that to work in America, that whole lifestyle? Was it as good as you expected it to be as well?
It's different. I mean, everything's super size over there. So there was a bit of getting used to in terms of that. But I think, when I think of America as a country, there's a lot of similarities to the UK. So I think, in terms of being able to slot in probably a little bit more seamlessly to their way of life, probably made it easier. They have a lot of the same things as the UK. But I think probably the real difference that was highlighted to me was just how much sport means to them. Like everything is super competitive, ultra competitive, like even you could be coaching 5-year-olds and it's like the biggest thing in the world. So yeah, that took a bit of getting used to. Like, I'm super competitive as well, but yeah, that was next level.
And were you working with boys, girls, or was it a mix out there?
It was a mixture. Yeah, it was a mixture in kind of different age groups as well.
And was that good or bad? Like, did you want to go there and focus on a specific age or gender?
Not necessarily. I was pretty open, and I'm glad about that. It just gave me a varied experience. I think depending on the age group that I was coaching, sometimes it can be more difficult at a younger age group. The attention span and everything else. Whereas in the older age groups, they have a little bit more determination to want to learn, etc., which was good. But I got the best of both worlds, so yeah, that was good.
But you went to Dubai next for 3 years, and obviously we all know what goes on in Dubai. It's quite a hectic place, right? And it's only becoming more hectic. But in a footballing term, what was that like?
Do you know what? Still to this day, the best experience I've ever had. I was 23 at the time, and again, I think in football, you kind of get opportunities quite a lot through knowing different people, etc. And somebody that I know, he knew the academy director, who was in Dubai, and they were looking for a female head coach. Anyway, we just got chatting, we jumped on a Skype call, and that's kind of how the role came about. And I've never been to Dubai before. Obviously, a lot of people had said you can't do this, etc. It was a complete opposite to that. Don't get me wrong, there's rules, etc. But for me, just the lifestyle and an opportunity for me to really kickstart my kind of coaching career, it was hands down the best experience I've ever had. And I still to this day go back a few times a year. One of my sisters actually lives out there with her husband, so yeah, Dubai means a lot to me, not just from my coaching career, but also just from personal as well.
So were you doing that on the side of anything, or was that just your full-time thing?
That was my full-time job. So, and I think that was, for me, it was kind of, I was offered this opportunity, and when I was playing it, the WSL hadn't formed yet. So it was kind of like not sure where the ceiling was going to be playing wise, because obviously all the infrastructure of the WSL wasn't there. And then I obviously got offered this job in Dubai, and it was kind of like, this is an opportunity to go and have a full-time job, earn a decent salary, etc., and see where that takes me. So it was just too good an opportunity to turn down.
And were you working with people that lived in Dubai, like Dubai residents, or people who live in the UAE, right? Were you working with these people, or was it like foreigners coming into Dubai to live there?
Yeah, so the academy that I was at, it was a lot of English coaches. So the owner of the academy, he actually used to play for Manchester United. So yeah, it was more the coaches were English. It wasn't just he was picking those. It was just they were, I guess, the people that he brought in. He wanted people from a decent football background. But in terms of, because over there the academies are a bit different. They pay to come to the academy over there. So obviously you'd get a mixture of expats as well as like local Emirati players. So it was, it was. I don't want to say it was a culture shock, because actually there's like 75% of people over there are expats and only 25% are Emirati. So it wasn't a big difference, but it was an eye-opener in terms of there are different cultures, and I've probably not been exposed to that. So it was a great learning curve for me.
But what I really wanted to ask about was like the local talent pool. Is there a big local talent pool in Dubai, or is it still got a lot of room to go?
I think at the time it definitely had a lot of room to grow. I think one of the reasons why I was brought over for that academy was that they only had 15 girls in the academy when I arrived, and by the time I left, I think it was about 87 or 89. So it was definitely new, but the talent pool, there is an awful lot of expats in Dubai, and one of the features of the academy that I worked for was we tried to get as many players to go professional or gain scholarships. So we had quite a few players, both boys and girls, that gained scholarships over to the US. or were able to get trials and then contracts in the UK. So that was our main aim. But yeah, we did entice some of the best talent in the UAE just because of the type of academy we were.
You came back to England, to Nottingham Trent University, became the head coach there. Is that because you were studying at the university? How did you come across that job?
No, so actually, before I went to Dubai, I'd graduated from university. But basically, once I'd done 3 years in Dubai, I'd kind of achieved everything that I could there. And I was like, okay, almost hit a ceiling. So now I need a new challenge. And I was contacted by Nottingham Trent. They were looking for a head coach of the women's first team. And I think probably because of me having studied there and played there, it probably helped in terms of already knowing me as a person. And whilst I did that, I also was at Birmingham City. So I went in there as first team coach for the 3 years that I was also at Nottingham Trent. So I kind of did those two alongside each other. So yeah, that's just how it came about. Again, conversations, knowing people.
Birmingham City was a great thing for you because obviously they were in the top flight of women's football at the time. What was that like to work around this becoming a professional environment, right? It was just up and coming.
Yeah, so it was brilliant. So it was when Mark Skinner was manager at the time, and I'd known Mark since I was, I think, about 14, because funnily enough, he used to be my coach when I was in the under 14s and 16s. So I remember I just rang him up when I was looking to come back from Dubai and said, look, is it possible for me to kind of come in? I remember saying to him, like, can I just shadow you, and see what the environment's like? Because obviously there's the WSL had formed then. So I was coming back into a different environment. And he was like, I don't want you to kind of shadow. He was like, I'll find you a role, sort of thing. So obviously was extremely grateful to him. And then he ended up moving to Orlando after that first season, and then ended up working with 2 other managers. So yeah, kind of mix of emotions, really. My time at Birmingham, there were some really, really good points and positive points, and then also some, challenges that came, with different managers, etc. But for me, that's how you learn, that's how you develop. So overall, it was a good experience.
From the 3 years that you spent in Birmingham, from looking inside from the out, it looked like every season got a tiny bit harder. So like the second season you were there, COVID disrupted the whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think, when the season that I was there with Mark, we had a great season. The squad that we had was brilliant. And look, football works in different ways. I think, the really good players that we had became difficult to hold on to, when big clubs are coming in for them. Naturally, everybody kind of wants the next step in their career. So, yeah, I think once Mark left, there was the crux of the team that, went on to other things. So it was almost like a rebuild. And yeah, I think those next 2 seasons were a struggle. We were kind of battling in around staying in the league, which was obviously difficult and had its challenges. But I'm also like, we had the highs of the season before. Now I've experienced the real challenges, and I'm just all about how do I learn, how do I develop, because there's going to be moments, which I obviously have experienced now, that those 2 years of challenges have really helped me in more recent years.
I think when COVID came about, if I remember rightly, obviously the Premier League stopped for a certain time, but then elite football, as they called it, started to come back quite quickly afterwards. Obviously, like the Premier League, Liverpool won the league in that season. For the women's game, the league just stopped, right? Was that not classed as an elite playing field then?
Yeah, well, I guess there was the argument of that. Eventually we kind of came back to it. I can't remember the exact time frame of how much we stopped, but yeah, I think that was the argument of, we're talking the top level of the women's game, and the top level of the men's game. Why is it not the same? But again, that posed its own struggles, its own challenges. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we were governed by what the government wanted, weren't we? So couldn't really argue.
The last season that you were at Birmingham, 11th in the league, and again, it wasn't the best of seasons. How did you decide to come about leaving? Because you've gone on a really big high your first season, and then, as we sort of mentioned, it sort of went a tiny bit downhill.
Yeah, so I mean, Birmingham held us special place in my heart just because I, spent so much of my career there. But the manager then, which was Carla Ward, she then moved on elsewhere. And, I was in that limbo moment of Birmingham bringing in a new manager. Was hoping that manager would want to, at least meet, have a conversation, see where we wanted to work together. And, unfortunately, it didn't work out like that. There was no conversation, and it was kind of the season was drawing closer, and I was kind of thinking, well, I'm going to say, I don't know if I've got a job here. So, yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to go into all the ins and outs, but I had to do what was best for me personally. And then obviously was then offered the Bristol job, and still to this day, that it was probably one of the most important moves that I've made, moving to Bristol.
And what was it like? How did you get that move? Was it just through someone that you're working with in your years before?
Yeah, so it was an agent that I was working with that had said, look, Bristol are looking for an assistant manager. Would you be interested? And of course, for me, I was looking at it, a prospect of the next step in my development and my career. And I went for an interview, which was strange because before then I'd never interviewed for a job. And I remember being really, really nervous on the day, thinking, God, am I prepared for this, etc. But it obviously went well because I was then offered the job. And those 2 years being Lauren Smith's assistant were two of the best years I've had in football. What she did for me and how much she valued me was amazing. And, still to this day, we stay in touch. So, yeah, that move for me was really important.
With the Women's Super League and now the Women's Super League 2, it's constantly adapting. Promotion and relegations are slowly but surely changing. Could you describe to us what it is like to be in the Women's Championship at the time and what the promotion and relegation system is like? Because you finished third and didn't get promoted.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, so the season I joined Bristol, they'd just been relegated from the WSL. And I remember the owners of the club had said to Lauren and me and the rest of the team, look, we obviously want to get back into the WSL, but we want to make sure that we have infrastructure in place so that we basically don't yo-yo. So they'd kind of said, look, we want to get promoted within, 3 years. So in our head, that was the plan, the strategy. And then I think, we just missed out on second in that first season. And so I think then expectations changed, ready for the second season, and it was like, you need to go and win the league now. So yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. I think a lot of people now think the WSL needs to expand, to have only had 12 teams in it. Is it as competitive as what it could be? One up, one down, there's not really much room, I say for error. And then obviously I know the new rules are coming into place in terms of the playoffs, etc. So yeah, I mean, I think there's pros and cons to everything. But I think in that moment for us, because we knew it was only one up, one down, the focus had to be there. And there was, almost, I say, no room for error. For me, it spurred us on to make sure we were on top of our game week in, week out, as best we could.
Could you talk to us then about the new promotion relegation and what is changing in the women's game?
Yeah, so obviously there's now, I think, like the third place in the championship, then kind of go into a playoff, which if I'm being completely honest, I think is good in one sense, but also, I think if you're in the WSL and, you've lost every game, as for instance of the season, but then you go and play in that playoff game, you can then stay in the league, and it's kind of like that. I think that for me is like, where does the competitive edge kind of come in? So yeah, I think it's a tough one, whether they'll play around with it in future, see how this goes. But yeah, I think it's a difficult one if, you've had a underperforming season and, don't get me wrong, if you finish third in the championship, you must have still had a pretty decent season, and it can all come down to that one game. That's where it's tough, but I guess that's football sometimes.
So how many up and how many are going to go down in the new season then?
God, you tested me now because I feel like it's changed so many times. But yeah, so is it two up, two down?
I'm sure it was 2.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it's changed to. Yeah.
I think that's good though, right? And then I also think perhaps in the future, I don't know if you'd have an insight on this, but are they ever going to make the team more than just 12 teams, as you sort of touched upon before?
Yeah, so I mean, that's what the talk has been for a long time. I think 12 teams in the league, it doesn't sound a lot. I mean, when you look at the season, you're still finishing kind of into that mid-May, but I know there's been a bit of talk about it's now called it used to be called the Continental Cup. It's called the Subway Cup now. There's been talks of, is there a point, but is there a way that perhaps take away those games, and then put more teams in the league and make it more competitive that way. So I do know that from the people that I've spoke to that are involved, especially in like the WSL, everybody's kind of the same opinion that the league needs to grow. But I think with that, there has to be teams coming into the league with the right infrastructure and backing, because otherwise the disparity between the teams is just, ridiculous. And then the competition goes down, which is obviously not what we want.
You were made of the championship with Bristol in the second season, but you guys won it. What was it like to be in that promotion celebration, getting promoted back to the Women's Super League?
Oh, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I think I remember that game against Charlton, and it was, we knew that if we won that game, we'd won the league with, I think, was it 2 games to go, which was important. And it was an interesting time for us because just before that game, we'd had a slight dip in form and results. And so it was kind of, we need to get this done now, because like I remember on the last day of the season, we played Birmingham. And I don't know if it was, because we'd already won, it was motivation there, etc. Because I do think that if it had come down to that game, it would have been really, really tight. But yeah, the fact that we did it and did it professionally and with style, the performance was really, really good. Just made the celebrations, even better. It was a really good day to be a part of, and nice end point to the season.
And then Leicester City came up next, another big club in the women's game. How did that one come about? Is it again just connections, or was it something else?
Yeah, so funnily enough, they were using a recruitment agency to recruit for an assistant manager. At the time, I wasn't looking to leave Bristol. Like, I loved it there. But, if we're speaking honestly, it was whilst I was at Bristol, I had a second job. And I was getting up at 5 a.m, driving an hour and 40 minutes to Bristol because I lived in the Midlands at the time. Do like a full day there, leave, then would drive back home. And I was working in, my friend's dad's pub at the time. So, I'd arrive at 6 o'clock and sometimes I wasn't finishing till midnight. And it was just that cycle of doing it because the salary that I was being paid at Bristol wasn't enough, to, I say, live off properly, if that makes sense. You'd be scraping the barrel as such. So, yeah, I was contacted by this recruitment agency for Leicester. And obviously when they spoke about the role and even the salary, it was kind of like, wow, this could be the first time other than in Dubai that I could just have one job, and be earning a good enough salary that allowed me to just focus on one thing rather than be here, there and everywhere. And I think I just looked at it and thought it's probably better for my personal life in terms of being closer, but also allowing myself to give my all to that job because I haven't got to think about another one.
Well, I think you did give the job your all. You became the interim manager towards the back end of the season after Willie Kirk left. What was that like? How did you get offered to become interim manager?
I mean, obviously the situation happened, and I think kind of what naturally happens is, as the assistant, you kind of end up stepping into that interim. In a lot of cases, it's just a natural move as such. And then obviously at the time it was just head down. I remember it was the weekend that we were playing Liverpool in the FA Cup quarter final, and it was just, for me, it was business as usual. It was just, okay, you're stepping into this role. I didn't know how long for, but it was just like, we've got a job to do. And then obviously as a bit of time went on, the club kind of said, look, we want you in charge until the end of the season, which obviously I think, I say helped the situation, because I think when there's not clarity in what's happening, it can sometimes, cause a bit of upset where people aren't sure where they stand, etc. So yeah, that probably helped us kind of get through to the end of the season, and we managed to, I would have loved for some more points as always, but we finished the season with the highest points tally that Leicester had. So yeah, there was huge positives to take for sure.
So when you're the assistant manager and the manager leaves, you become the manager, but then who becomes your assistant manager, and how's the backroom staff all reshuffled?
Yeah, so Stephen Kirby, he was the first team coach. Like naturally, we had a conversation, and it kind of almost just made sense that he then kind of slotted into my role, and I'd say you kind of move one up, if that makes sense. And he was someone that, between me, him and Willie, we worked really, really well. So he was someone that I trusted, and it just seemed like a natural decision to have him come and support me as well.
And even on like the admin side, do you also move into the manager's office? Do you have like a complete reshuffle like that?
Funnily enough, I didn't move into the manager's office. I think the one thing that I was conscious of, we were at that crucial part of the season, towards the back end. We'd obviously progressed to the FA Cup semi-final. I think in my head, I was probably like, just want to keep things as normal as possible. I think actually probably looking back in hindsight, it probably would have been better to have, acted a little bit more like the manager. Just because I think sometimes when you're the assistant and you might step up, people might still see you as the assistant. So yeah, no, I didn't move into the manager's office. I'm one of those people that it's nice to be around. We only had a small amount of the tech team in our office anyway, so it just made sense to be in there and be bouncing ideas off each other than be segregated.
In the quarterfinals, obviously Liverpool, you pushed aside the 2-0. What was the semi-final like?
Oh, it was amazing. I think the club really went for it in terms of the preparations, and going to make sure that we had the best hotel and everything was in place. And we as staff wanted to make sure those players had the best possible opportunity to go out and perform. And Sam, who was the analyst, he was fantastic, because he put together this like montage video of like our moments throughout the season and everything, and it was just fantastic. We played it to the players in the kind of pre-match meeting, and there was just such a buzz about it, and the stadium itself. It's memories that a lot of those players will cherish, as for me as well, because some people don't even get those opportunities. And yeah, of course, we were 7 minutes away from getting to the final, which is obviously gut wrenching, but football's cruel sometimes.
And when you're going towards the end of your time at Leicester, obviously Everton was to come up next. Did you know that at the end of the season that you were going to be departing?
No, I don't know how much I can and can't say. I think they brought in a new manager. We were still meant to be there as staff. It didn't work out that way, and I think sometimes when new managers come in, they bring their own staff, and it happens in football. So it wasn't meant to be the way it was, but I think the Everton job came about, and I'm in a really happy place at the moment. I'm an Everton fan anyway, so obviously that was brilliant for me. And yeah, like I love it. Brian is fantastic, and working with the players there and the staff is brilliant. So as one door closes, another one opens, as a lot of people say.
So how did that first season go for you in 2024-25? So last season.
As in at Everton?
Yes.
Yeah, so I came in towards the end of January, and obviously the new owners of the club had just come in. And I think there was a real buzz about the potential for the club. And after having spoken with Brian, and obviously, you know, he's worked very closely with the board and the new owners, you know, there was a real sense of excitement. And I think that's what, you know, swayed me to obviously to come in. They made a couple of really good signings, and I think we really pushed on in that kind of second half of the season, picked up some good results. I think we probably fell short in a couple of games, you know, where we should have held on and got points, and we probably could have finished, you know, a couple of places higher because it was quite tight in that kind of middle of the league. But yeah, it was really positive. Gave us a lot of vision in terms of what we needed to do moving into this season. And I think in terms of summer signings, when you look at us compared to anyone else in the league, I think we've made some real good signings and probably signed the most amount of players of any team so far.
And going into this new campaign, there's quite a lot to talk about. But what are you most looking forward to? Because obviously now you're going to be playing at Goodison Park. I mean, that is quite some gesture from the club.
Yeah, and I think it just shows, you know, how much they value the women's team. You know, they've done similar with Roma and the women's team there. And so it's kind of like we knew what model they might try and adopt. And, you know, we were thinking if it's going to be similar to that, we're in for a good season. But I think it says a lot. You know, they could have demolished Goodison. They could have given it to, you know, the boys, etc. I think the fact that they're wanting to give it to the women, and, you know, there's been changes made at the stadium. You know, obviously it used to say home of Everton. You know, now it will say home of Everton women, changing the change rooms. There's loads of stuff going on behind the scenes to make it perfect for us. And I think that speaks volumes for, you know, the support that we're getting from the new owners.
Well, especially when Arsenal were definitely going to play at the Emirates, Arsenal women at the Emirates more often than not. And obviously other women's sides are going into their men's stadiums or the club stadiums more frequently. But I think to have your own stadium, which is even bigger than where you were playing before, is just amazing, right?
It's huge. And I think, you know, where we played before, you know, although it was one of the best surfaces in the league, it wasn't ideal for getting fans in through the door and kind of generating that revenue. And I think that's been a real key factor to the move of Goodison, in, you know, because it's in the heart of Liverpool, is growing the revenue, growing the women's team, the game, and just making it feel like Everton. Because when you're in the heart of Liverpool, you know, there's a buzz. You could go in on any day of the week and it's either blue or red. You know, people are in football shirts no matter what day of the week it is. And I think, you know, to just be able to have an iconic stadium like Goodison as your home, you know, when you speak to people from other teams, and, you know, whether we played them in friendlies or I had text messages and people were like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, must be so exciting. And I think it is. You know, there is a real buzz around the club, you know, obviously a club as a whole, but also the women's team. You know, and that just for us should spur us on even more to make sure that we have a successful season.
Well, your first three games are quite interesting. Obviously, Liverpool, it's a derby. They've got a new manager themselves. Tottenham have a new manager. They didn't probably finish towards the back end of the season where they would like to. And then obviously London City Lionesses, who have just come up. So it's quite some opener for you guys.
Yeah, you know, I think it's to be whacked with the Merseyside derby in the first game is, I mean, it's one of those where it's like, is it a good time to play it? Or is it, you know, would you rather be kind of into your stride, etc.? But look, I think for us, it's a historic game, and we need to go into it, you know, how we have done a lot of the other meetings. So yeah, that for us is a huge game. We're hoping for, you know, a good crowd and a good atmosphere, and yeah, to kind of kickstart the league with points on the board. Tottenham, I think, is an interesting one. You know, again, it's new manager. You know, I know they've only made one or two signings so far. I would expect them to still continue to make more, but they're always a tough side. Like, they've got some real quality individuals in that team that, you know, can cause damage on any given day. So it's definitely a team that we need to make sure we're on top of. And then, yeah, of course, London City, I think I don't know if anybody knows what to expect. You know, obviously they've made some big signings. You know, I think the biggest thing for them is you've got to get the team to gel. So, yeah, I think it'll be not knowing what to expect, but that will probably make sure that we're on our toes and ready to go against them because, you know, with the quality that they've brought in, I think they'll definitely be a force to be reckoned with.
So towards the back end of last season, when the league obviously finished, from what I could see, there's quite a big level in competitiveness on the points board. So, for example, fourth place got 43 points, fifth place got 28 points. And obviously you have your likes of Chelsea and Arsenal that are spending big bucks, and obviously City as well. Do you think that there's like a level in class that is got to be bridged within the next couple of seasons? Because I've been to Tottenham and I think there's definitely a lot of room for improvement, but their side's very good.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think there's always that bit where, you know, especially when you are affiliated with the men, and it's, you know, because the funding is key. You know, if I look at Chelsea when Roman Abramovich was the owner, I remember he came out and made a statement. It was the season that Chelsea men and women were both in the Champions League final at the same time. And his comment was, why wouldn't I want the best men's and women's team in Europe? And I think, you know, when you adopt that kind of mentality, you've got the buy-in already, because for him, and I know obviously he's super, super wealthy and was at the time, and, you know, it's a bit different for some of the other teams, but I think other clubs are now starting to realise if we want to compete, we need to make sure that we put the money in, because every team is just raising their levels more and more. And I think that's where the difficulty comes in sometimes of the team that gets promoted from the Championship. The disparity is huge because a championship like package in terms of, you know, what you're getting money wise and what you've got to spend on staff and players is so minor compared to what a WSL is. I think it's really difficult for a team to come up and be able to stay in the league. Like I look at Crystal Palace, like they spent a lot of money and they still weren't able to stay in that league. So yeah, I think it's important that we try and bridge the gap as much as possible. You know, our teams like West Ham, Everton, Villa, etc., going to be able to compete with a Chelsea money-wise ever? I don't know, but I think bridging the gap between that is the most important thing.
So this season, I believe, Women's Europa Cup is coming to the game. I've been looking at it. Firstly, it's very hard to grip and quite hard to understand, but also there's a two-legged final, which is quite something.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It sometimes feels like in the women's game, it's like you're that guinea pig for things, you know, rightly or wrongly. So yeah, I mean, to have a two-leg final is a strange one. But look, I think the fact that there's another trophy, European trophy, coming into the mix is, you know, obviously brilliant for the game. More opportunity, more exposure. So I think on that side, it's, you know, real positive. I think they just have to be mindful not to. Sometimes they don't want to follow what the men do because they want to keep it separate. But for me, I'm like, we need to make sure we're not going too far left. You know, a two-leg final, you know, realistically, is that what the game should be about? You know, if you had a two-leg semi-final, it's like, okay, fine. But for me, a final's a final. You get one chance. But yeah, no, I think it'd be interesting. I think it's good for the game. So yeah.
And also that starts this season, right?
Is it this season or next season? It's all right. Funnily enough, we just had the referees in meeting only the other day, and I lost track of how many new challenges and rules that have come in. But
because
yeah.
I was thinking like competition date, so I was thinking that it was this year. But anyway, it doesn't matter when it is.
Yeah.
It's quite a strange one because you get taken in there based on how you perform in the Champions League and also your association rankings, right? So I suppose if you finish third in the Women's Super League, you're not guaranteed to get this competition. Is that right?
I mean, I'm not 100% sure on all of it, to be honest. So yeah, I don't know the answer for that, but obviously I know that finishing third took you into that kind of Champions League qualifying. So like Manchester United, for instance, obviously they're in that kind of Champions League early rounds to qualify, etc. So I don't know how that works in terms of with that, and then do they then get an opportunity to kind of go into that? That's probably the bit that I was unsure of with what came out.
Denmark is coming up next before your season openers. When are you going there, and how long are you spending there?
We go tomorrow morning, actually.
Oh.
So need to get everything ready, and we're there for like nearly a week. So yeah, like really good. I think it's coming at a good time in pre-season. You know, we've got a lot of new players. So I think, a week away. Obviously, Brian's from Denmark, so it's familiar territory for him. And yeah, we've got loads of team bonding things planned. So yeah, I think it'll be a really good trip, and I think everybody's excited, and you know, different environment and an opportunity for everyone to kind of build relationships. And obviously we're playing a couple of games whilst we're there, which is good as well.
Well, Jennifer, I wish you all the best for the new season. Thank you very much for joining me. And come on, you Blues, although I am a Liverpool fan, as you can see over here. But
I noticed that, actually. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.